Hi, everybody. Welcome into another edition. This is Cross Functionality, the show, the podcast connecting coaching, baseball, softball, male, female, hosted by former college baseball and softball players. We got a great topic today, episode 31, vision training for hitters. I'm looking forward to doing this one. Of course, I can't do this alone. Please give a nice warm welcome to my friend, co-host, partner in crime, softball national champion at the University of Alabama, and current day renowned coach, Cassie Reilly-Boccia. I think, are you in a different room today, or did you switch?
Same room, just room is
Okay.
reorganized.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm back at the house. I've been bounced around a little bit the last couple of weeks, but thank you, Jim. Yes, back at the house, just
Back at the
rearranged it
compound.
last week. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like the audio and visual part of the show today, the audio is the same, visual is a little bit different background, somewhat same show.
Yep. Looks good. The background on the what we're filming on is even different.
So please join us every Wednesday. New episodes 9 a.m. Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course to watch the show, Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. We've got vision training for hitters. We're going to talk about soft focus, hard focus today, eye breathing, which is very interesting. You being a Yankee fan, you probably know a lot about Alex Rodriguez, know a lot about his career and the type of vision training that he may have done. We're going to discuss that because he did bring up something a few years back about his vision training on I think it was on Sunday Night Baseball, and he talked about how when he was looking out at the pitcher. We'll get to that in just a couple of moments here. I do want to talk about this and get your opinion on this, though. This week on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode 133, we discussed, Jake Epstein and I, hitting to your strengths. And I think that's a very good topic to talk about now. College baseball, college softball is underway. And sometimes mentally, I see players, a lot of watching some of these games, see players with those big swings, players trying to do too much, and they're not hitting to their strengths. So as a coach yourself, a renowned coach, players, what do they need to do to hit to their strengths, understanding themselves as a player?
You know, it's funny. The first thing you said is, when you first said this, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, when someone's in a defensive shift, do you try to hit where they're not, or do you just trust your strength and try to hit to your strength? This is certainly dependent. What I try to get the athlete to know is just become aware of themselves as a hitter. I have athletes who have certain tendencies, and when they have, let's say they have an extremely steep swing angle, and when they see that tendency happening, they know right away, well, shoot, I'm not going to be looking at the high pitch today. I'm going to get up in the box and try to attack a low ball or something along those lines. I have certain athletes who can't stand hitting inside pitches. And so we work on having them crowd the plate and basically challenging a pitcher to thread the needle or throw a middle outside pitch. So awareness is first, I think, is knowing, okay, what's your awareness? Are you a home run hitter? Are you a singles hitter? Do you like the high, the low, the in, the out, the fast, the slow, whatever, what makes you the best version of yourself at the plate? And then how can we start to manipulate our game a little bit to get what we want?
Yeah, pretty much. That's a pretty simple way to put it, but it does hold true in a variety of ways. So again, that's our topic, hitting to your strengths, this week on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. So subscribe to that show. Follow us on social media at Jim Tara, at Coach_CassieRB on Twitter, at Coach CassieRB on Instagram. Flip those two. I'm sorry, flip those two. At Coach_CassieRB on Instagram.
It'd be nice if they were the same.
That's right.
Make life a lot simpler.
All right, let's get into today's topic, episode 31, vision training for hitters. Let's talk about soft focus and hard focus. And this is one of the reasons that players will call a timeout or should call it. By the way, do you ever tell your players if a pitcher reaches, this may not matter anymore with the pitch clock, but when a pitcher reaches a certain time in your head of not delivering the pitch, do you tell your players, okay, count to 3 Mississippi, and if they have not delivered the ball yet or aren't in the process of doing so, step out, because it gives not just your body a break and relieves the tension, but it gives your eyes a break as well.
Yeah, so we do talk about it a little bit, but it's less of like a standard 3 Mississippi. It's more like if at any point you're feeling like, okay, wait a second, they're taking too long or something, like you put that hand up. And we practice it a little bit. We practice getting in the box, getting in the rhythm, putting the hand up, and then being rewarded time. And then we practice not being rewarded time, because there are going to be those certain scenarios where you feel like you've been in that box for 3, 4, 5 seconds, whatever it is, pitcher hasn't thrown, you ask for time, and the umpire's like, nope, we're going. And you have to be ready to hit. So ask for time, put your hand back on the bat and swing. So we'll practice a couple of those scenarios because I think it is important. And even when I was in college, I remember our performance psychologist, he goes, okay, now what happens if you get to the plate and you have an absolute panic, like you're just not in the right mindset at all? What do you do? And we were going through a checklist and he's like, no, you need more time. How do you buy time? How do you buy time? And he finally goes, you pretend you have contacts and you pretend you got something in your eye and you need to fix your contacts so you can give yourself 3 minutes to
pretend like you're in pain, almost like you're in pain. Because I wear contacts now too, so I understand it completely.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely unbelievable. It's, that contact shifts a little bit or something, you get dirt, you need your solution. Yeah. So we definitely talk about that a little bit, but I'm curious to see if pitch clocks will come to softball. And if they do, I really do hope that it transitions a lot smoother than it has into spring training with maybe some different stipulations.
Do you think, well, do you believe that softball needs a pitch clock? I think the game is pretty quick as it is from what I don't think
it needs a pitch clock. There's actually another podcast I do listen to give them a shout out. They don't need it though. It's 7 Innings Podcast, and it's just the ESPN analysts from softball that talk every week about college softball. But one of the things they did mention is they talk about trends. And one of the biggest trends in college softball is that instead of having 2 or 3 pitchers on your staff, you're starting to see staffs of 5, 6, 7, which is so in the last 10 years, pitching staffs have doubled. And what that leads to, when you pitch by committee, it leads to more pitching changes, and it just has spread the game out by like 20, 30 minutes sometimes. So talking about, instead of putting restrictions on play, you put restrictions on the coaches' meetings and the time. And, you have clocks for that, for when they go to transition pitchers in and out, instead of putting a restriction on, the flow of the game. Because I agree with you. I think a softball game is fairly fast.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's only 7 innings too. But I also see the pace of play in general. I don't care if the game's 13 innings, 18 innings. If the pace of play is slow, then obviously the pitch clock is going to be a huge factor in trying to speed things up. But I'm kind of surprised. We're kind of on the pitch clock subject now, but I am kind of surprised in spring training the amount of hitters and pitchers that have been called for infractions and can't seem to necessarily adjust correctly.
Yeah,
especially the veterans too, right?
So that's been interesting because like usually you're at that level because you can adjust, and it's kind of, it is what it is. You don't have control over it, and yet it's been I keep seeing stuff pop up on Twitter. I'm like, haven't you gotten it yet? You just you can't do that anymore. Like that's exactly what they're trying to take away, and you can't be upset that you've always done this. The rules changed, and kind of. I don't know why they're arguing about it. Like, I get it. So I think it's ridiculous. You can think it's ridiculous, but when you're playing the game, you're playing the game, So
I think Davey Martinez said this too. The manager for the Nationals, he said it perfectly. Hey, this thing isn't going away, so we have to adjust whether we like it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is, I'm waiting for, I guess, more hitters to kind of or pitchers too, to abide by it instead of just seeming to lull back into their old routines, I guess.
I'm praying that when we get to the regular season, we don't see a game end on a strike 3 call without a guy actually
loaded. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm hoping they figure something out. And I've seen some suggestions on Twitter on how to do certain things. And, maybe you make that clock a little different in the innings 8 and 9 versus 1 through 7. And so I'm hoping they get it right. I'm hoping MLB is willing to adjust to get it right.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, sorry, we got off topic. Soft focus, hard focus.
That's right.
Your definitions for soft focus and hard focus. How does a player go about that physically? How do they go about it mentally too?
Yeah. And so to be honest, a lot of this vision training stuff, not only was I taught when I was going through it, but in researching it, some of the first time you hear someone talking about vision training is Ted Williams. It's someone from a long time ago who's trying to figure out staring and is that the best way, and eye breathing and all these things. But hard focus and soft focus, what that essentially is saying is you can intently stare at something. Like you could have your eyes locked in and you're really going at it. And it's what happens is anytime we go to look at something, if it's not moving, our eye kind of just zones out just a little bit, because it's basically saying, okay, we're good. We don't need to, we can kind of let go a little bit. But when you're constantly reinvigorating that stimulus where it's no, intently focus, that's leading to a little bit more fatigue than what you need. And what, so many times when you talk to hitters, they're like, yeah, I stare at the hip for a softball player, or I stare at where the arm slot is. And what happens is they've been staring, they fatigue their eye. And by the time the ball actually gets into that view, it's not the highest definition version of that image that they want to be seeing. So the soft focus is kind of just not letting your eyes get too locked in on a stare, and more having them relaxed. And when the time comes for you to see that pitch, maybe that's when you lock in, but it's not being too locked in too soon with that image.
Oh, breathing has to be a part of that, right?
I think any exhale, you release that CO2, it relaxes your muscles in general. Your eyes have muscles, and your eye movement contains musculature. And so it's all related. So absolutely, that exhale is going to be huge.
Alex Rodriguez, I brought this up earlier on at the beginning of our podcast today. He talked a little bit about eye breathing. I don't think he coined that phrase, but he talked a little bit about eye breathing a few years back when he was an analyst on Sunday Night Baseball. And he talked about that specific focus that you need to have at the right time when that pitcher is about to deliver the baseball, in that case, or of course, in our case, deliver the softball too. And I guess the eye breathing kind of goes with that soft focus and that hard focus as well, for what he was talking about with that type of eye breathing that he used to do as a player when he would get locked in and ready to see that pitch coming home. And you can actually, if you go back and look at a video of A-Rod, watch his highlights, you can see that his eyes, when he steps into the box, they actually change a little bit. His eyelids kind of get a little more squinty, and he looks like his eyes did that eye breathing, and now they're on that hard focus part of when that pitcher's about to deliver the pitch home.
It is so interesting because, right, that's the lens to your camera, and you could have the most perfect swing, the best exit velocity off a tee, the best bat speed, like you could have everything going well for yourself. And if your perception of that ball is just a little bit off, that's all it is. It's like we don't have that much room for error as hitters. So the idea of making sure the interpretation is real and our body can then actually adjust to it sometimes it turns into like the most important thing. And you think of, I remember the biggest slump of my life when I was a junior in college. I had this little freshman come up to me and she's like, I think you just need contacts. And I was like, no, there's something wrong with my swing. Like, and sure enough, I needed like the slightest adjustment, and I couldn't believe how much of a difference it was. So if it really is such the crux of like the foundation of how we actually hit, right? It's the input of information, then it should be such a paramount focus for us to incorporate into training.
So you had a David Ortiz issue then when you were struggling.
I guess so. I really thought my swing was just off, which it was based on my inaccurate interpretation of what was going on.
So it all started with the eyes, because that was when David Ortiz went through his biggest slump years ago. His eyes. He had to get his vision checked, and they realized, hey, you need contacts. So you ended up getting contacts.
Yep.
And were you have to answer this honestly now. Were you offended that a freshman came up to you as a junior and said, hey, I think something's off with your vision?
Well, it was more of I was like, I thought I had it all figured out. Like, I thought I knew how to maneuver my slump, no problem. And sure enough, this freshman ended up coming to work with me at Athletes Warehouse for 4 years. So she was my first hire. And now she's the assistant coach for Alabama. So she knows what she's talking about. But at the time she was 18, and I was like, huh. Okay, I know what I'm talking about.
So at first you were saying, okay, I don't think you really exactly know what you're talking about. And I think freshman, you were thinking this.
I was, yeah.
Freshman, you should go away.
Not go away. Just, I thought I knew best.
Okay. Excuse me. Freshman, I know best.
That's what I thought.
What is this current assistant coach's name?
Ryan I. Murray. It's a female, Ryan. And
so, Miss Murray.
I am Murray, yes.
Oh, I am Murray. Okay, I am Murray. So Miss I am Murray probably knows Montana Fouts.
Oh yeah.
Okay, obviously. So at Montana Fouts tweeted back on March 9th, I'm looking at it right here. She said, I love softball, and I retweeted it.
Yes.
She's the type to me. She just threw a no-hitter, by the way.
Perfect game.
Perfect game, excuse me. For the audience that doesn't know. She just threw a perfect game. And on her Twitter, she goes deer hunting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
She's holding a deer by the antlers.
I think she's a big country girl.
Okay. And
cowboy boots and all that.
she already has an agent, apparently. I'm looking at this in her Twitter biography. Anyway, so she threw a perfect game not too long ago. She seems like the type to me. I've seen her pitch because I saw her pitch when she was down in Clearwater. She seems like the type to me that when she says I love softball, she loves the entire, excuse the word, she loves the entire process of what it takes to become a great, great softball player. And in her case, a great, great pitcher.
I think so. And you know what? She's been someone who has given back so much to the game. So I think she does love the process, but I think she loves the game and feels indebted to it in one of those, in the best of ways. I think she loves the workouts. I think she loves playing. I think she loves the fans. There was a lot of people during that COVID year. It's that option. Okay, are you coming back for that next year? Or are you going to come back for that 5th year, whatever it is? And in talking with her about it the next year, she's like, yeah, what else would I be doing? Of course, I'm going to come back. I have an opportunity to play another year, So I think she's going to be one of those players who's going to play until her body says no. And it's good for softball because she's obviously a tremendous player.
So there's a lesson in there for you with Montana Fouts and many other softball players across the country. When they say, I love softball, it's not that they love the game. They love the whole idea of softball practice. We're doing the little things, doing what you have to do. Part of doing the little things is eye vision training, which is our topic today, episode 31. Go. How does somebody eye breathe? How does somebody practice the eye breathing? How does somebody practice hard focus, soft focus? There's got to be ways and methods to practice these things, right?
Sure. So a couple things I used to do. I'd put like a water bottle on the table and I would practice looking past it and then looking at it. And looking past it and looking at it. And then I would try to sync it with my breathing. So inhale, looking at it, exhale, look past it. And then maybe I'll switch it up again. And what I would try to do is just work on like being very under control of that focus. And then when I got to the plate, sometimes, the whole idea is you don't want to be staring, right? You want to be nice and relaxed. Same thing like in your stance, you don't want to be a statue. You want to have some type of rhythm. Your eyes are going to have that little bit of rhythm too. And when I work on this with hitters, it really is dependent. I have some hitters who scan very lightly side to side with their eyes. And then I have some hitters who scan very lightly up and down. And then I have some hitters who scan back and forth, essentially like look far, come back in, look far, come back in. But when we can sync it with their breathing, this inhale, like 2 inhales, 2 exhales, and we'll set a metronome up. And their swing thought will be crush this ball, crush this ball. And so it's in sync. And then we start to add the focus training. So they're at the plate, wow. The inhale. Yeah. And now they're looking deep, coming back in. She hasn't pitched yet. Looking deep, coming back in. She hasn't pitched yet. And we're trying to just have them get their rhythm and timing all in sync.
It's almost like a cheat code that you just talked about.
Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, granted, if we're having a really hard time hitting a ball off a tee consistently, I would start there.
Yeah.
This is one of those things where it's like you've checked a lot of boxes and now you're like, okay, let's start to add some of this in now too.
So let's go over that again one more time. So you sync the breathing with your eye breathing.
And so it's just focusing. Yeah.
So start with the breathing, right? Because that slows down the heart rate. Start with the breathing, and then you go to the eye breathing, right? How do you sync? And how do you focus out? Okay, so I'm trying to think. Outside of that, how do you sync those two together? Because I mean, a lot of time in game situations, your heart's still going pretty.
Yeah, but your breathing doesn't have to be the same as your heart rate,
right?
Either. Okay. So ideally, like the steady breath will keep your heart rate like at a normal pace. But adrenaline is going to dictate a lot of your heart rate, but your breathing can still be controlled. And to make sure that as our heart rate goes up, our breathing doesn't continue to get shallow is probably important too. Like you'll notice if you're trying to go, like if you won't be able to adjust your focus that way. So it would it's hopefully a self-check where you're like, okay, you get one big deep breath in, and now it's just your normal cadence of breath, because we're not playing a sport like football or lacrosse or soccer where it's like nonstop sprint. Like we might have elevated heart rates because of pressure situations, but when we're at the plate, we're very physically calm. So that is unique, I think, for our sport or comparison.
And if you're not physically calm, you're not going to have any success whatsoever.
Just at least not consistent. Not might every now and then, but
so when you step, let's go through the process. So when you step, when you're outside the box, right? Because you can't really do this too much more in baseball. But you're looking at your bat, right? Everybody always wondered why players look at their bats, and I think part of it is because of their vision. They're trying to get their vision correct.
I used to try to
Focus
look at the
in.
tiniest little speck. Yeah.
Oh, you did. So you looked at the tiniest little speck on your bat. Okay.
Yep.
So you're looking at your bat, then you step into the box. After, you probably don't have time anymore to manicure the dirt.
Right.
So your soft focus, you're looking out towards, I guess, the out or something in the outfield. What did you do? Did you look at something in the outfield, scoreboard, big screen,
I
or
used
video
to,
board, whatever?
yeah. So if her hip, so like right where her hip, where the ball would release, it would be the center field wall behind that. And I would try to go center field wall back to where her hip was, center field wall back to where her hip was. And it just was calming. It was like, that was very easy for me to do. It felt right. I felt like if I was, a lot of my teammates used to scan a little bit, and I used to not feel as comfortable letting my eyes go away from where that hip was. But some people do. So it's like, it really is just, that's why you practice it. You try to figure out, okay, what's going to make sense. And this is the eye scanning, the eye breathing, it's going to feel really weird at first. And you're going to be like, why am I doing this? But all of a sudden you do it a couple more times, and you want to try to just like slowly fold it into your like game routine. I wouldn't try it for the first time necessarily come game time. But it's slowly folding it in and being like, okay, this is the next level of being a softball player. This is the next level of being an elite hitter. How can we really hone in on this? And I think you'll start to find it being really successful for you.
So, all right. So correct me if I'm wrong. So being an elite softball player, being an elite baseball player, elite at anything, you have to do those little things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vision training, it doesn't seem all that small, but it's considered a smaller that smaller category of things that you need to do to become really, really good as a really, really good hitter. Okay. So my question for you, I guess, when it comes to vision training, when do you start? What age do you start incorporating this? Right.
Yeah. You know what? This is one of those things that's like, it's kind of neat and it's really interesting. And I don't find it to be a necessity, because I also like early on, I really think you might hurt a young hitter by trying to get them to think about this. You really need a hitter who's like mature enough, but also is like craving something new and fun to do with their in practice, let's say. Because you can have an older athlete that's a little burnt out and feeling a little overwhelmed by the work they're doing. And then you're like, oh, hey, by the way, do this weird thing with your eyes.
Yeah, that's right. So, do some eye breathing. What?
Yeah, it's I have like a 13-year-old hitter who's like really into training, really into practice, craves the fun of it, watches college softball all the time. And this is just a discussion. And we don't do something super intense, but we say, okay, start with your eyes over there, relax. Okay, now lock back in. And now I throw your front toss. Like, so maybe that's how you just introduce it slowly. And then I have, a 16-year-old hitter who is getting invited to big time camps and things like that. And that's when now I'm like really trying to challenge. I'm teaching this to her. She's training with it. And then I'm trying to really challenge her with it. So because she's intrigued, because she's at that high level, it's the same thing when you introduce a physical thing. You want to challenge and make it hard, but if they're like intrigued by this, they're not going to get super frustrated by it.
Yeah. So I think the first thing you could do, it's more, I think I'm asking you, I'm not an expert in this field, but I'm asking you first players should learn at 13, for example. I'll use that because you used that example. When you're 13 years old, shouldn't you learn how to players should learn how to breathe and slow down their heart rate first, so then they can actually go on to the vision part and slowing down their focus, right?
100%. Yeah. And sometimes that's another thing too. You get athletes who are like typically calm and confident. You'll notice that relaxed breathing comes very naturally to them. And if you start to bring awareness to it, it's almost like they start thinking about breathing, right?
Right. You overthink it.
Yeah.
You overdo it, right?
Right. So that's why, like, at younger ages, you just want to tread carefully. You want to, like, yes, you want to have fun with hitters and you want to introduce like these new interesting concepts. And then also too, like, I'm probably talking to a lot of people who do private lessons. You want to sell yourself. How many people talk about breathing and eyes and all that as a coach? So yeah, you want to look like you're doing something different than every other coach, but you don't want to do that necessarily at the expense of the hitter now being so hyper aware of what's going on in their body and with their nose and their diaphragm and their eyeballs that, if we do have a hyper aware athlete, maybe we do need to kind of remove focus internally before we come back to it with more advanced stuff like this.
So, all right. So let me ask you this. when it comes to certain drills, without giving too much away here, we don't want to give too much free stuff away. What kind of drills would you do with your hitters? What kind of drills would you prescribe them when it comes to the vision training?
Yeah, it's more, you could take any drill, most drills at least, and then add some visual components to it. So let's say you're hitting off a tee. Some people think you can't do stuff off a tee, but in actuality, one of the best things is to actually just get checked in when you're hitting off a tee. So you get into your normal stance, you get into your normal rhythm, and as you're about to hit and you load, because so many times people want to load and then put their head straight down on the ball. Like we're not emulating what we're actually doing in a game. When we load in a game, our eyes are still on the pitcher. And now we're actually just going to contact, and our head really shouldn't move that much. It's really our eyes that are pretend tracking a ball. So you're adding a little visualization component. You're having them get checked in. That's like the simplest physical component of it. So eyes checked into a pitcher and trying to emulate what it looks like in an actual game setting. You could, if you have the cage and the tees for it, maybe you set up 3 or 4 tees in a row, not because you're trying to hit your tee into the next one, but because you're trying to emulate, okay, this is the pitch path, and the hitter again is looking forward and they go far tee, close tee, close tee, close tee, and then they hit there. So they're just working on their eyes tracking along a line of tees with balls on them. Next from there, probably one of the most advanced drills I'll do is I'll throw an even spin. I wish I had a softball next to me, but for anyone listening, I'll just hold it as if I'm holding like a 4 seam, let's say, like across the seams, right? So hold it like across the seams, and I'm throwing that into the pitcher, and I'm like, to the hitter. I'm saying, okay, this is like an even spin, and this is the one you want to crush. And they're watching it. They're like, okay, good. And then I'll spin it differently, and I say, this is an odd spin. You're going to take this just for this drill. And we'll do that where they hit even, take odd. And then we switch it up where they hit the odd and take the even. And what we start to work on is so much of our visual acuity leads to our mental clarity, and kind of vice versa. So when our mental clarity, if we're saying to ourselves in that drill, okay, I'm going to hit the even spin and then I'm going to take the odd spin. That's too many decisions. That's like saying I'm going to hit the strike and I'm going to also take the ball. You make one decision at the plate, and it's the decision to take, right? Because the decision to swing is already on. It's yes, yes, yes. I'm crushing. You see odd. Nope, that's not what I want. So you're forcing yourself to kind of just almost like you're putting it like a screen over a projector, or like a slide in, where it's like, this is the slide, even spin. And anything that doesn't align with that, that's not what you want. So you're just training your brain and your vision to be perfectly in sync with like this spin. It's not necessarily working on curveball spin or screwball spin. It's just training that aspect of our pathway. You will start to find hitters have to like really focus on a ball, because you don't need extreme focus to hit a lobbed in front toss. But when I do that drill, they're like, oh crap. Okay. Yep. I got it. Let me get my game like focus in now. So those are some preliminary drills that I work on for vision training.
So what about the Pete Rose rule?
Oh, it's the Pete Rose rule.
Where he used to just look at the ball into the mitt.
Oh, look back into it.
Are you for that? Against it? Neutral? Nobody does it. That's
so the reason why
I don't see anybody do it.
I don't love it is because you can't actually track all the way, right? Like that's why you have that's the whole research is when I'm making contact with a ball, the ball is moving too fast, and that like as it approaches my bat, that I can't actually see ball hit ball. That's like an impossible thing to happen, right?
Yeah, Ted Williams said that. It's true.
Right.
Scientific fact.
It is. Now, off slower pitching, you can. Like if someone's like, I play slow pitch and I can totally see, you can. Right. Off slower pitching, you can. Yeah. The reason why Mariano Rivera was so successful is they said his ball moved past that point. That's why he like broke so many bats and did so well for so long, is because he was getting his ball to move past that point of where hitters are essentially, they know where that ball is, and they're making a physical assumption as to where it's going to end up by the time their bat gets to the ball. When you really think of like everything that has to go right for a bat to hit a ball, it's impressive that hitters hit the ball at all.
No kidding.
So the only reason why I don't encourage it, but I'm not gonna, if it works for someone, it works for someone. We don't actually track with our head. We track with our eyes, right? Like our eyes are what's watching the ball. So I don't want to encourage our head moving down to where the ball is. So that would be the only reason I wouldn't encourage looking back into the catcher.
Yeah, that makes sense now that you put it that way. It is amazing though that you had a funny point there, but it is true that hitters can actually just can hit it with the way as much as balls move now in both sports. Because I've been watching a lot of softball. Watched a little last weekend too in New Jersey. By the way, it is cold in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was 40 degrees but windy, so it felt like it was 20 degrees last weekend.
It lives inside you
at the Jersey Shore
until April.
So I walked out on a Saturday morning for our Northeast listeners. Last Saturday morning when it was nice, actually, very sunny, baby blue sky. So I step outside. I had my jacket on, and I said to myself, "This is not going to be that cold because it looked decent. 40 degrees. I can deal with that." But then the wind kicked in. So I walked to the beach. I stayed in a house that was about 2 blocks away from the beach. I walked to the beach, and the wind was at my back. I turn around from the beach, walking back. I'm walking against the wind. It's like I was trying to push a prowler with my entire body. That's how bad the wind was. It was really bad, whipping around.
I think there was advisories in the Northeast actually last weekend, like wind.
Okay, I didn't see that. I probably wouldn't have gone
so
outside.
There you go. It's legit.
But anyway, so I was watching softball last weekend, a little bit of softball before I went to a wedding that I had to go to last weekend. And it was on, what channel was on? I don't remember what it was on, but the house that I was staying they had like ESPN Plus or whatever. I don't know. So we watched on somebody's laptop that was hooked up to the television. And I'm watching, and the amount of movement that some of these pitchers have, not just on their rise balls, right? But on their off-speed pitches, but also their rise balls too. But then I watch a little bit of baseball, and I watch like a 97 mile per hour sinker, from this guy. Or I remember last year, something that stuck out to me, a 95 mile per hour sinker from Clay Holmes last year of the Yankees, right? And the amount of movement, late movement that he had on his pitches. But you're exactly right. Based off everything that we see from these pitchers, it's amazing that it's amazing hitters are able to do what they're able to do and barrel up the baseball now. I'm not saying that Babe Ruth wouldn't or Ted Williams wouldn't have success in today's generation. They would, because they were ahead of their time, and they would evolve just like they did back then to put themselves ahead of their time. But it is so amazing that hitters are able to do what they're able to do and hit the baseball and barrel up the softball and baseball on a daily basis, because God, the late movement, and to what your point you just made about the vision, about the eyes and what they perceive, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yes, I love giving pitchers credit where credit is due, but I will usually not because I just think hitters are so.
Well, how could you?
For instance, why is it not 3 balls and 3 strikes? I think that's absolute garbage. Pitchers already have an advantage, and now we're giving them an extra, like, whoops-a-daisy. You get to have 4 balls. That is insane to me. That always bothered me.
An extra whoops-a-daisy. Whoops. I missed again.
You can make 4 mistakes. I can only make 3. I hated it.
Now that you mention that, though, who's really who's taking advantage of the pitch clock? Who does it favor the most? I think it favors the pitcher. If they're careful, they can't get hurt now, which I don't think they will. I think there is that fear. I've heard that fear with the pitch clock.
Right.
That pitchers
are rushing people.
They're rushing and they're going to get hurt. But I think the pitchers have the easy advantage, because hitters, I mean, God almighty, the pitcher's going well. Say Max Scherzer's out there.
Right.
He's throwing 4 scoreless, striking out everybody. Throwing, it's perfect game thus far. 4 scoreless, 5 scoreless, perfect game. You have to get back in the box really quickly. What is stopping Max Scherzer? Nothing. You can't, because you're trying to reset as a hitter. Meanwhile, you only have so much time to do it. Again, I'm not against the pitch clock, but there has to be some legislation towards it.
That's fair. Yes, agreed. Agreed.
Pitchers already have
needs to be.
Also, pitchers have, when you say pitchers have, get that extra ball. Pitchers have the advantage. You know why? Because the hitters are the one that actually makes the out. They actually make the game turn when you think about it. Think about it, right? Without a hitter making outs, there would be no game. You just have the pitcher throwing bullpens all day, pretty much. Right?
Yeah. No, hitting is more difficult than pitching. And I joke because we have a lot of really high prospect baseball players in our building, and they're all 16, 17, but very mature from a baseball standpoint. And a couple of them flirt with being two-way, and then they'll be like, you know what, coach, I think I'm going to stick with being a pitcher. I'm like, yeah, it's easier. You should. It's like, get away from these hitters. So it's like,
That's right.
It's
all hitters do is fail. Sorry. It's true. When you say baseball and softball is a game of failure. No, hitting in baseball and softball is failure, not pitching.
Right. You could listen, I could throw my hitter 10 front tosses, nice and easy lob front tosses, and she will not go 10 for 10. I'll do it up to my baseball players, and he will not go 10 for 10.
Now hold on. Now you're telling me you've never gone 10 for 10 on front toss?
I have. I'm saying
you
majority.
Oh, okay. I got
majority of people. They're not like.
I got you.
You get what I mean? So, and then they get in a game, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, they're gonna get 10 pitches from a live pitcher of. Like, and this pitcher's going to think he's just so good because he's striking people out. And what I want to tell him is I just threw that same guy 10 nice and easy lobs and he still didn't hit. So it's like, you know what? It's hard in general, and it's not all due to the pitcher just being so dang good.
So, okay. And then let me break it down further. So then when you get to higher levels, let's say how many pitches do you think a game? Who's your favorite Yankee right now? Like, who's the player you look at and is like, outside of Judge?
Well, I was going to say I enjoy watching Judge hit. What's the ace pitcher? I enjoy watching him right now.
Hitter.
Oh, hitter.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Judge. Judge is my favorite.
All right, we'll go with Judge. So you get an Aaron Judge. How many pitches a game do you think he actually gets to hit that are good pitches to hit, not pitches on the black of the plate?
So 4 at bats. He's lucky if he gets 4, right? He's lucky if he gets 1 pitch in at bat. Yeah.
So, and how many pitches do you think he see? This is probably out there, but how many pitches do you think he sees a game?
Let's say he has 4 at bats, and he'll see on average 6 at bat, maybe 5, depending on it. Like, if they're working around him, he gets to fouls the ball off, a 2-2 count, 1-2 count. That's 4 to 6 range.
So we'll look at the number. He's got about 4 pitches maybe to hit a game that he can do damage with and crush. That's hard.
It's really hard. Right.
It's hard. The hard thing to do. So next time we'll give everybody advice today. Next time somebody complains about baseball players making too much or athletes making too much money, give them the statistics that we just talked about. Ask them, how many pitches do you think Aaron Judge gets to crush a game? The answer is 3 to 4. If that. Now,
right, because if he doesn't get intentionally walked, and that's if he actually gets a pitch to hit that game.
So he gets 3 to 4 pitches that he can actually do damage with a game, and you're hitting a round ball with a round bat, and that goes for like the highest level of college softball too. Because oftentimes I think my biggest fallacy on this podcast is I don't bring up softball enough, but that's the same thing with softball, right? Let me tell you, Montana, Miss Montana here. She's not Montana Fouts is not going to give you your best hitter at many pitches to hit. She's just not going to do it.
Right. Because a strike is not always the best pitch to hit. It's not always a good pitch. It's like some nasty screw, curve, spin, change, whatever. It's not the pitch not the best pitch to hit.
Well, now we're going down the rabbit hole too, because oftentimes you might see hitters at the major league level or in softball looking for something else, and they might take a pitch on the inner half that they can do damage with. So now, there goes one of your pitches. Now you've got 3 pitches the rest of the game to hit. So if you're not on line with your plan mentally and thinking along with that pitcher properly,
Right. And that's like when you do get to that level, it's great if you're wanting to look middle in, but if you know that pitcher doesn't is not going to throw you middle in, you kind of have to adjust your plan based on what that pitcher is typically going to throw in that strike zone for that pitch. So yeah, that's when like scouting reports and knowing what the pitcher throws and comes into play, and maybe you're sitting on speed instead of location. It's, makes it hard.
Very hard. I agree. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Hitting is hard. I hope everybody takes something away from today's show. We talked about vision training for hitters, and oh, by the way, hitting is very, very hard. I don't care if it's baseball or softball.
That's right.
Or high school or college or pros.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's very, very hard. And my godson, by the way, he was telling me last weekend that he likes to box.
Mm.
You know, he has a bag at his house, and he likes to hit the bag with his boxing gloves. You know, he tapes up his wrists. He showed me how he does it too.
How old is he?
He's 11. He'll be 12 this month in March. So I have to get him new boxing gloves. That's what he told me he wanted, new boxing gloves. And he doesn't play baseball, or he plays a little bit of basketball. He wants to wrestle. You know what I said to him last weekend? I said to him, "Don't play baseball."
Yeah, you got to really love it. I think that's why it's like the love of the game, right? Like there's movies, these like almost romanticized movies about baseball, because in order to deal with all the crud you got to deal with to play the game, you really have to love it. It's like a really bad abusive relationship. It's like, 0 for 4, just beat me up, spit me out. I'm coming back.
I'm coming back.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. Well, I told him, I said, don't play baseball. I think his mom overheard me, and I think it's true. Don't play baseball. Just don't do it. Continue to box. I'll come to all your boxing matches if you box. I'll be there every one if you box. Mm-hmm. If you wrestle, that's great too. Which, by the way, I've heard people have said this. Wrestling is good for baseball players. I don't know. Haven't seen any studies, but I've heard coaches say that. Don't know if it's true.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because you're not tracking a ball at all. But I could just see like most baseball players are very skill oriented. They can hit and throw, but they're not very athletic or body aware. Sometimes they can only hit and throw. So maybe wrestling aids that. But I mean, if I have a pitcher in our building that has a chance to go play Division I, I'm not letting him roll around on the floor and hurt his arm.
I agree. Oh no, I agree.
So I think it depends.
I agree with that.
Per usual.
I agree. All right. Now I've heard also that football, if you play football and you're a baseball player or softball, baseball player, that playing football slows down your bat speed. That's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true.
Because you're not hitting? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Nick Saban likes to recruit cornerbacks that play outfield in baseball because they can track a ball and run a lot better than most.
I didn't know that. That's wow, that's something.
So he said about
we need like nuggets like that once a week from you.
Okay.
We need Alabama, Nick Saban, Coach Murphy nuggets once a week from you.
Okay.
Little things that we don't know that Nick Saban, why he recruits certain. Was Mac Jones a baseball player?
I don't know. I never looked at. I never went back and checked it. We had a top end recruit whose dad had played NFL football, and so we were taking her around, and because the dad was in the NFL, we went and saw Nick Saban too, and got to sit in his office. And that's what he said, and I was like, huh. And I was like, I wonder if he's saying that to just make a baseball softball comment because we have a recruit, or if that's actually the truth. And I never double checked it.
Now you need to find out if Nick Saban recruits soft mental quarterbacks like a Mac Jones, because apparently he's very soft mentally because Bill Belichick said don't yell at him.
Gosh, I'll look at that too. I'll look into it for you. I'll go ask.
That's your homework for the week.
Fair. Jalen Hurts doesn't seem soft though.
No, he does not. No, he is the real deal.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any arm strength though. He was a baseball player.
Yeah.
He was a baseball player. All right, next week, tech surrounding baseball and softball. We're going to talk about that. A lot to talk about there too, with the technology. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Gizmos and gadgets. Gizmos and gadgets.
Gizmos and gadgets. Yes. Yeah. My earpiece is falling out. I'm sorry. Yeah, gizmos and gadgets. We're going to talk about that next week. Let's give a little preview. What is your favorite gizmo? What's your favorite gadget? Is there a difference?
Is there a difference between gizmos and gadgets? Yes. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Okay. I am going to side less technology and more gizmo, I guess. I think maybe a gadget is a piece of technology and a gizmo is I have no idea. I side more with tools than I do with technology. How about that?
Cool. All right. So then next week, technology, the gizmos and gadgets around baseball. We're going to discuss that. TrackMan, what else? Blast Motion.
Whatchamacallit, the pocket radars.
Pocket radar.
Any type of, there's a Pro Velocity bat. There's vision, like the VR eye goggles.
What's the thing that goes on the bottom of the knob of the bat?
Blast, and Diamond Kinetics.
Diamond Kinetics. That's what. Okay.
Leaders, yeah.
Diamond Kinetics. Okay. There's some coaches that will push back on it. Rapsodo, yes,
Mhm.
I like Rapsodo.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to read. There's some coaches that would push back on this technology type stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, they just don't
It's a lot
like
of
it.
money.
That's fine. That's why. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe they don't like it because it's a lot of money.
Mm.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. Be sure to subscribe, Apple, Google, Spotify. Watch the show Softball Strength Academy YouTube page, and we will talk to you all next week. Have a good one.